Well, I'm really excited about the whole day, but this next speaker is FCC Commissioner Geoffrey Starks. Now, one of the reasons why I really like Commissioner Starks is because he took the place of my former boss, FCC Commissioner Mignon Clyburn. And really, they handed off the torch so well because when you think of Commissioner Starks, you think this is the commissioner that is there representing the people. He is so focused on consumers, making sure that they're going to get connected and making sure the service is affordable and that competitors who we represent have an opportunity in the marketplace, right? So I am so excited about that. I cannot wait to hear his remarks. But then there are other people on my staff who are really excited Commissioner Starks is here because he too is a Kansas City Chief fan. Chris Shipley has been rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs his entire life. It started to get a little unbearable around the Super Bowl in our office. But no, we were very happy that the Kansas City Chiefs won. We were so happy that Chris brought in cake to celebrate. And I'm sorry you didn't make it to the celebration in the
Where was
INCOMPAS
my
office.
invite?
But next year, right? They're going to do it again next year. Yeah. So, Commissioner, thank you for your leadership. You do so much great work. We're all here for you. We cannot wait to hear what your remarks are. And then stay tuned. I know you're getting a little hungry with me, but this is such a great appetizer because when he's done with his remarks, he and I are going to have a little bit of an exchange, and then we're going to let you go to lunch. So, okay.
Well, thank you. Honored to be here, and of course in person as well. I know these are the times we live in, but always grateful to be able to look people in their eyes as well. Thank you, Angie, of course. It's an honor to be at this year's Policy Summit, speak before professionals like you all that have dedicated truly your careers to building competitive markets. We are truly living in a remarkable time in telecom history. From CompTel to INCOMPAS, your advocacy has been indispensable, has played a central role over a number of years in getting us where we are, from moving us, of course, from the baby bell era to securing opportunities for interconnection to modernizing regulation for an era of IP and broadband. The long sweep, the arc of telecom history has brought us to this moment, though, defined by the twin goals of access and equity for connectivity's new age. These goals are not unfamiliar, of course, but they do feel imbued with a new sense of promise, fresh opportunity. It's a moment to be seized. And that's why I wanted to talk with you all for a few minutes here about why I feel the fierce urgency of now. First, we've known for years that in a network world, competitive markets only work if they work for everybody. And so certainly Congress and the FCC understood that when they acted to open up our telecom markets back in the 1990s. They realized that although connectivity to one user unlocks value for every other user, competition alone won't drive new networks to rural homes, low-income households, other vulnerable communities. They responded, of course, by creating the universal service programs to ensure that a newly dynamic telecom sector was also an equitable one. These programs made substantial progress in the years that followed and continue to have enormous impact for us today. But in a game, of course, of telecom cat and mouse, innovation in connected technologies also progressed, expanded our baseline connectivity requirements, healthcare, education, entertainment, employment. Virtually every aspect of American life embraced broadband and bandwidth. At the same time, wireless climbed to higher speeds from seamless roaming to near nationwide coverage. And of course, married with GPS, Wi-Fi, touchscreens, processing power, it has fueled the smartphone, tablet, and IoT revolution, ushering us into a new era of connectivity for everything, everywhere, including within our own homes. And before too long, certainly well before 2020, These changes made clear that we had significant challenges when it came to the fundamental issue of equity. We had many more communities left to connect, serious adoption barriers to break down, chief among them, something that I have focused on, affordability. The moral and economic case for ubiquitous, high quality access had not only become stronger, it had transformed into a fundamental matter of civil rights and American competitiveness. The fierce urgency of now for everybody. A bipartisan Congress, I know we just heard from Congresswoman Matsui, responded with force in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, meeting the moment with a once in a generation commitment to connecting every American household with high speed internet. The centerpiece of the law's broadband efforts lie in BEAD and in the Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP. BEAD put 42.5 billion into building new networks that reach primarily unserved and then underserved homes, thereby addressing those gaps in our broadband supply. ACP put $14.2 billion, lowering the cost of broadband service for vulnerable households, thereby ensuring that economic insecurity does not depress our broadband demand. The two programs, though, really work as a pair. As it turns out, building a network doesn't strictly solve for the millions of Americans who struggle to simply afford broadband service. At the same time, deploying new networks becomes less risky, less expensive when more of the serviceable population can actually afford the end product. And that way, ACP enables BEAD to reach more homes. To get broadband to everybody, everywhere, supply and demand both matter, and they're both directly related. This, along with the urgent need for ubiquitous connectivity, were the key insights, I believe, in the infrastructure law. So that brings us to today, to 2023 here. In light of the IIJA's enactment, we have, of course, turned to implementation. State and local leaders, members of Congress, the president and vice president all have urged that we move with all deliberate speed to reach our shared goal of internet for all. I vehemently agree, and that's why I believe now is the time to call for sustained funding for the Affordable Connectivity Program. With enrollment picking up, we'll need to address the longevity of the program's funding before too long. We're much better off addressing the issue quickly and with certainty. And there are three reasons I want to lay out for you why I believe that is so. First, we must keep the millions of Americans who have signed up for the program secure in their access to broadband. As of this week, as of right now, 16.6 million households, that's not people, households, rely on ACP for their broadband connection. They live everywhere in the country. All 50 states have at least 10,000 households enrolled. 33 states have at least 100,000 households enrolled. And with enrollment around 90,000 in West Virginia and my home state of Kansas, and they're knocking at the door on that 100,000 benchmark. Rural communities in particular have a strong foothold in this program. In fact, several thousand rural zip codes, more than 80% of non-metro counties have at least 100 ACP households signed up. We can all agree that these vulnerable households have enough to worry about. Losing the connectivity that they need in order to succeed, to help their children succeed, should not be something that we add to their plate. In fact, the case for keeping them connected has only become stronger. Telehealth adoption continues its impressive growth. And as we work to make telehealth even better, even safer, we're also noticing connectivity-driven disparities there, though. In particular, low-income families have lower rates of video telehealth use, due in part to their lower rates of broadband adoption. At the same time, the American economy continues to soar. on a digital path, and will soon approach a point where a substantial majority of jobs and the vast majority of high earning jobs will require advanced digital skills. These are the skills that you build over time as you use and stay connected to a device with a broadband connection, the exact tools that ACP provides. So let's be clear. Connectivity is about more than STEM or STEAM. It's about equal access to opportunities, whatever you ultimately choose to do for a living. And so 16.6 million households is an incredible number, a number that we at the FCC are proud of. I'm proud of. But I see even more momentum when I look at this program. And so that brings me to the second reason why we need to fund ACP sustainably. There are millions more who are eligible, and we need to get them signed up. Since the day we rolled out ACP, I've been vocal, very vocal, about our need to reach every one of the roughly 48 million households that are eligible for the program. Later this month, we'll be announcing grantees for the FCC's outreach programming that will continue to raise awareness, boost eligible enrollment. These programs, of course, include, for those who have followed closely, Your Home, Your Internet, which is my pilot program at the FCC, which will focus on signing up families that are on federal housing assistance, a particularly vulnerable group of Americans with a low rate of enrollment, and helping them get processed. But as our outreach efforts extend, the last thing we need is the prospect of a future funding lapse looming over our enrollment efforts. I've traveled across the country speaking to local officials, eligible residents about ACP, and let me tell you, the potential impact here is substantial. Trust in government remains critical. Much of it revolves around the fear that the government could suddenly end ACP. In fact, on several occasions at several town halls, I've been asked specifically by folks in the community what is going to happen to me if ACP funding stops. The problem will only grow worse as the funding cliff approaches. And so while it may not be affecting a significant number of signups right at this moment, the funding certainty surrounding ACP will become an enormous enrollment barrier soon enough. It also bears emphasis that ACP secured participation from hundreds of providers, maybe some of you here in the room, many of whom have committed to providing qualifying broadband free of charge with the subsidy. In fact, as the president and vice president announced in the Rose Garden just last year, providers cover more than 80% of Americans at qualifying speeds at no cost to the ACP consumer. We need that number to grow, not shrink, in order to get every eligible household connected. And certainty behind the program is key here. And so that leads me to my third reason here. And it is third, but it is equally important. We need to move quickly to secure ACP so that our BEAD dollars go as far as possible and succeed in connecting every unserved and underserved home. With BEAD, as NTIA Administrator Davidson has said, funding will begin flowing to states later this year. And before we know it, states will be defining projects, putting them out to bid, and evaluating and choosing between competing proposals. And so that raises the question of how much funding each project will consume, how far the dollars will go in terms of connecting those unserved and underserved households. ACP enrollees tend to be good customers with low churn, and they add significantly to the subscriber base of the networks. And so that means the availability of ACP directly affects the revenue side of the equation for these providers, and therefore the size of the funding gap that will have to be bridged. In fact, A recent study quantified the impact of ACP's availability on the build out in rural areas that are, of course, BEAD's focus. What it found, it concluded that ACP reduces the subsidy needed to incentivize a build in rural areas by a whopping 25%. I'll call that a synergy. The IIJA, in fact, pushes BEAD provider recipients to plan this way by requiring them to offer a low cost broadband service option. And so here's the point: if we leave ACP's future uncertain, we're potentially reducing the impact of BEAD's appropriation by as much as 25%. And so the numbers here, with an estimated 7.8 million unserved, 6 million underserved households and locations based on current data, that could translate into potentially millions of Americans in rural areas continuing to find themselves on the wrong side of the digital divide. And so that weighs heavily on me. It should weigh heavily on all of us. We can't afford to leave behind the 16.6 million households that are already enrolled in this essential program. We can't afford to undermine efforts to sign up the millions more who are eligible but are unenrolled. We can't afford to effectively raise the costs of BEAD in a way that could leave millions of rural homes sustainably unserved and underserved. And we certainly can't afford to do all three. So putting ACP on a path towards sustainable funding will help us capitalize on this unprecedented moment that I believe we're in. Keep our promise to the American people to connect every household to high quality broadband. Let me turn briefly, before I wrap up, to the second thing that I wanted to share with you all today. It's really about the fundamental change I see in how we are continuing to view equity in what I have called connectivity's new age here. And that is the importance not just of protecting data, but also making sure it's not used to drive inequity. As many of you know, the Commission has long protected the privacy of our telecom consumers. Even our first take on CP&I rules recognize the importance of putting the user in control. But the concern today is much more vast because it truly depends on connectivity. When we're online, we read, we talk, we bank, we watch, we learn. We're searching, we're buying, we're reacting, posting, commenting. We do it with the products that we pay for. We do it a lot, of course, with the products that are for free. Each step of the way, we now know we're dropping little crumbs about who we are, where we live, what we do, how much we make, what we believe, and so on. Those crumbs can be used then to serve ads to us, recommend content to us, make credit decisions, build products, and more. Sometimes those crumbs turn out to be kept around for no reason at all, it seems, waiting for a buyer or a business case, and perhaps even something that sustains a cyber attack. Needless to say, we're confronting these new issues in the collection of data, how it's used, and the potential for data-driven bias against communities that are vulnerable and underserved. I commend NTIA for launching its inquiry into this very issue, and I filed comments just yesterday as an interested party in what they are ultimately going to have as a report. So let me offer a few examples that I see in the telecom sector. First, there is the potential relationship between algorithmic bias and deployment. In the IIJA, Congress directed the Commission to promulgate rules to prevent and eliminate, quote, digital discrimination of access based on income level, race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin, close quote. We at the FCC, of course, have a proceeding underway to carry out that responsibility that Congress has entrusted to us. Commenters have raised concerns about discrimination driven by data collection and usage. Some have reminded us that providers use algorithms to deploy where and at what levels of service. Commenters have also raised concerns that bias in those algorithms could lead to minority communities being disproportionately underserved. Similar concerns have been raised about the data underlying network upgrades and maintenance, broadband advertising, subscription pricing models, and about the provision of less secure service to some communities. These concerns are important to me, and they warrant careful consideration that we're undertaking in this digital discrimination proceeding. The second example that I want to talk about briefly here lies in algorithms that companies are using to deliver captioning service to people who are deaf or hard of hearing. By statute, we at the FCC are responsible for ensuring that those who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf-blind, or have speech disabilities can communicate in a manner that is functionally equivalent to those without such disabilities. To carry out that responsibility, we fund a program to give individuals access to IP caption telephone service, which allows them to listen to the person that they're calling while simultaneously reading captions of what the other person is saying. The program is vitally important to those who use it, and so is transcribing speech accurately and reliably. Those who rely on this service use it for just about everything. Staying in touch with loved ones, talking to employers, prospective employers, seeking help when they need it, including 988 that we have focused on and 911. Typically, typically an individual operator provides the captioning in real time, but we're seeing growing use of automated speech recognition, ASR, to perform this captioning function. The question to me is whether ASR can, in fact, do the job reliably for all people. It's a concern I've raised in a number of proceedings before me as a commissioner's studies. And my research has shown that speech recognition systems make far more errors when transcribing the speech of people of color. And so we need to continue in our lane to closely examine whether these disparities affect ASR used in our captioning programs. Finally, if you've heard me talk about the media industry lately, you'll know that I am focused on what is the new IP transmission standard, ATSC 3.0. The potential benefits here to each of us as TV viewers are multiple, including more free over-the-air content, higher quality in picture and audio. But the new technology, as is often so, comes with risk. The transition that is undergoing right now will allow broadcasters, for the very first time, to collect much viewer data in a way that they do, in much more of a way than they do right now, give them the opportunity to deliver targeted advertising. Again, back to targeted advertising. And so we need to be mindful. Something that I am focused on here as a regulator is looking into these developments and making sure that the transition that's undergoing right now, that broadcasters continue to be good stewards of the public trust from the very outset. So thank you for your time today. We've come a long way, y'all, for sure. But if we stay committed, sustain our efforts, I promise you the best is still to come. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Wonderful remarks.
Yeah.
Really, to bring such attention to the ACP right now and where we are.
Yeah.
And that this isn't just about affordability. This is also about deployment, having the business case to deploy. It's about ensuring that the BEAD program will be successful. So I think INCOMPAS is a huge supporter of getting additional funding into the ACP program as quickly as possible to make it sustainable, as you just called for.
Yeah.
And we've been working with a coalition of public interest, consumer groups, also other trade associations and broadband providers. I have to give a shout out to Public Knowledge. They really lead the group. And what can we be doing as a group to, one, bring more attention to it, and then also convince the Congress this is well worth doing?
Well, it's a great question. I thank you for the hard work. I agree that a coalition is what's needed here. A couple things come to mind. Um, ACP is a program like many where I think success begets further success, right? And so we need to make sure that the snowball, every time we get a household enrolled, that snowball gets a little bit bigger. I think we need to continue to grow the program, make sure as many people as possible. We get the snowball so big that this program is absolutely going to be something that I think will have to stay mission critical. By the way, I think the program's already a success, but I want it to be an avalanche to continue the snow metaphor here. I want it to be an avalanche, truly of success. I think the second thing, that I would say, of course, at the kind of organizational level, at the provider level, you know, whenever I travel around, truly hearing that community organizations, that trust really is important in getting more and more people signed up. These vulnerable households, we need to make sure we're getting every hurdle possible out of their way. And they really are focused on the trusted organizations that are there. So I would for sure commend that at the provider level, we continue to push there. As well, I think is going to be absolutely important. And then, part of the reason why I wanted to come here and continue the call for sustainability. Really, this is a program that cuts across. There are vulnerable households everywhere. It's not just in urban communities. It's in rural communities, making clear the case that this is a program that is very much intertwined with BEAD. That is a program that we're all also focused on, and making sure that it's a resounding success. Collectively, obviously, it's NTIA that is focused on the BEAD piece. We have the ACP piece, but making sure that all of these programs continue to work hand in glove, I think is going to be really important.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your work. And we're looking forward to being hand in hand with you
Good.
throughout the year until we get this sustained.
Yes.
That's going to be our goal. We're going to keep our promise, as you said, to these consumers who are signing up and that we still need to reach to sign up. So give us an update on what's going on with your pilot project, your home, your internet. We talked a little bit about it when I was in your office a few weeks ago. And I made the observation that when my daughter moved off campus at school, and she signed her lease for her apartment, included in the lease, she was going to have internet access, right? And so tell me how that's an inspiration for what we need to make available to people around the US that are living in low-income housing facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. You qualify for ACP if you are otherwise enrolled in any federal low-income program. And so if you're on SNAP, if you're on WIC, if you're on Medicaid, however you can qualify. But the place that I decided to really put and prioritize my time, I think there's just a real natural synergy where if we are helping you get housed, you're having housing insecurity. We help you get housed. Let's just connect that house. And so it's a lot of what we do policy wise is step 1 to 2 to 3, but this is really straightforward, y'all. Yeah. We're helping you get a house. Let's connect that house. And so the pilot program is my effort for those that are on public housing assistance. Stay tuned. We very soon, as I mentioned, by the end of the month, hopefully sooner, we are going to announce the 20 the 20 places where we are going to focus on the 20 communities, really, where we're going to focus on public housing assistance and continuing to build up the enrollment there. Digital navigators, how they're going to work within their communities, have a unique relationship within their affordable housing place. Some of it's going to be tribal. Some of it I expect to be rural. Some of it I expect to be urban. The point is let's figure out what is working best to help those that are on public housing assistance actually get enrolled into ACP. Let's learn those lessons. Those lessons then learned can be extrapolated into how else we can help vulnerable households get ported into this program.
So next year, we want to have you back. So we're going to want updates on all of this.
And count me in.
Good. Did you hear that, Julia? We got our first taker. So thank you for that. I want to thank you too for your leadership in terms of recognizing the opportunity for consumers to attain more affordable service because competitors are in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
Your vote was key for our members to get access to multi-tenant environments.
Right.
With 30% of Americans who live in apartment buildings and condos, it was really important to set some rules of the road so that competitors can bring their new modern networks into those facilities and be able to provide faster, more affordable service. We have a number of member companies that are out here in the audience who've been working on the public housing issue. I can give, if I start to give shout outs, I'm going to miss people, but this is like really important work. And so the pilot project, I am so hoping one of our members is one of the pilot projects, but you know, it really is key to look at all the different possibilities that we could address this issue.
Yes.
There may be many different kinds of programs about broadband, and what it allows us an opportunity to provide, to look at what could be unique about each one that helps us address a part of the problem that maybe another one of the programs isn't able to address because it's not in that mission. Right. So it is incredibly important to have your leadership at the FCC on these issues, and we want thank you so much for that. So I'm going to throw just one softball to you, which I'm hoping. So please tell me you're going to stay on. So Chairman Lujan said to us, in the context of we have one nominee and we could be having another one soon, and he specifically called you out. So I won't make you answer this, but I am really hoping that you will stay on at the FCC and we'll have an opportunity to support your confirmation process too, reconfirmation process too. Please call on us, your friends at INCOMPAS, to do whatever we can to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.